Good. So today's topic, how to prepare for weather alerts. Today's agenda, we've gotten introductions out of the way. We'll touch on how to access our support resources. We'll go through what is involved in setting up an emergency plan. Then we'll take a look at the Alertus Threat Watcher and some solutions that would work really well, depending on what your environment looks like. Then I'll take you through a brief configuration of how we go about setting up the Threat Watcher. Good, so starting off with our services, our portal can be found at my.alertus.com. There you can find product documentation, software downloads, you can access our knowledge base and create support tickets. Creating those support tickets there will also allow you to follow up on their status. You can reach us via email at support@alertus.com, and you can also reach us via telephone. This is a brief view of our client portal. Yellow bar up top highlights different sections that you can click on depending on what you're looking for. We do have a search engine, so if you can punch in some keywords, if you know what you're looking for, that is another way that you can quickly find your subject material. Item number 3 displays how you would reach out and create your support tickets and check on its status. Now, quick note, we are moving this portal across to a new platform. So when you log in, you should see a big banner that says, hey, we're moving, and we have provided links to that new portal also. So weather incidents, they vary. They come in all shapes and forms, from lightning to thunderstorms to snow, hail, tornadoes, you name it. So how do we prepare for something like that? As someone who has worked developing or helping to develop business continuity plans, it always starts with your risk assessment. Identifying your risks helps you to provide the relevant controls. So your checklist, you should always start with a checklist, and that checklist would help you to see, associate your risk to some type of exposure. And once you understand that exposure, then you are able to say, well, if it's a thunderstorm, for example, then I can tell people, hey, shelter in place, or perform whatever actions are necessary to help mitigate against that individual threat. So your risk assessment will identify all of your risks, identify your controls, and help you better prepare. Planning and preparation. So since we're focusing on weather, the Alertus system uses some sort of feed, some sort of incoming feed that maybe it's NOAA or some other type. It could be AccuWeather, it could be any feed, any service that basically provides a weather feed. We can take that, process it, and based on whatever rules we've set up, then we can send out that clear and concise messaging to specific groups of people, giving them instructions. And of course, they follow whatever protocols your organization has in place. Definitely that business continuity plan is also key. Although, let me take a small step back. The main goal of having a plan like this ultimately is to preserve human life. Everything else sort of is ancillary to the preservation of life. So, perhaps saving money on business operations. Obviously, if you're having a severe weather incident, it could impact your business operations. It could impact many things. So, taking first steps. So, perform your risk assessment, get your policies in place, then train your employees and staff. This is a really important bit. In my experience, I've seen quite a number of organizations develop emergency plans. And because they don't exercise these plans, when something does happen, people are like, well, hey, what do we do? and people tend to stand around. These plans should identify places like, depending on what your emergency is. And I'm being a bit generalized here, not just for weather, but where's my muster point? How do I exit the building? Those kinds of things. So it does apply to weather alerts, but generally these are the kinds of things that you would like to have in place. So definitely testing that plan and ensuring that everyone is aware of what they should do really, really helps. Before I speak about this slide, another thing that should be considered is when you're sending your messages, they should be concise, they should be clear. In an emergency, it's not recommended to have someone or a group of people reading a really long message. So nice and targeted. So Alertus Threat Watcher. Our Threat Watcher basically, like I described before, takes in a feed, processes it, and allows for the carrying out of specific actions based on what we're processing and how your rules are set. So we can actually, looking at this list on the right of my screen, these are just some of the standard weather alerts that you can get based on your weather service feed. So from blizzards to floods to hurricanes, going all the way down. Not all may apply to every organization because you may reside in different parts of the country and or world, and therefore be subject to different types of weather emergencies, but we can do them all. So we offer accurate warnings to help you prepare. Because these alerts are sent pretty quickly, we are also able to process them pretty quickly, really leading to closing any gaps between when this event may hit to when people can adequately prepare and respond accordingly. We do have some additional options that we can do, which are listed below. A key one, a popular one, is lightning detection. This does require some additional licensing, but essentially we could also tie in lightning strikes. These tend to be not standard, so they're likely to not be included in your standard weather feed if that's coming from NOAA or AccuWeather or whichever provider that you choose. So we can tie those in. So here, let's take a look at some deployment scenarios. So as many of you may know, Alertus, we have a wide range of ways that we can activate a person, from alert beacons to desktops to speaker arrays to voice over IP to mobile. It really all depends on what fits your organization. But we do have some recommendations depending on what your scenario is or scenarios are. So for a campus type layout, and by campus we mean large open spaces, tons of people, we should think about how could we effectively communicate with these people. So here I'm speaking to your communication plan. So every good emergency plan should also include a component that speaks to how do I communicate? And this is where Alertus comes in. And we can help you get that message out. So in this case, we have a bunch of icons at the bottom of our screen. Definitely for wide areas, we want to blast audio so that people are aware. But there are a few drawbacks to just blasting audio. So let's take into consideration persons who may be hearing impaired. They may not hear clearly, so we can combine that perhaps with mobile activations. So they get a vibration, they check their phones, they can see. We have, if it's within a classroom, we can activate your desktops. We can activate our alert beacons. We have strobe lights, LED marquees. So we have a number of ways that we can grab someone's attention and display our message. This is why your messages should be concise to cater for these multiple formats. Another scenario we have is distribution and manufacturing. Typically, these are very noisy environments, or they can be very noisy environments with machinery, people moving around, trucks. So we'd want to be really, really loud. So we can perhaps deploy horns, high visibility strobe lights, alert beacons. That would work really well for this type of environment. Another example I have is similar to a campus, but think about an organization that is really spread out with wide open spaces, perhaps with multiple buildings. How do we reach all of these people? And how do we reach them effectively? Let's think of a scenario. What if I wanted to reach, or what if I need to reach just a subset of people within my organization? So your organization may have multiple sites with multiple buildings. We are flexible enough to allow for really specific targeting depending on what weather alert may be affecting a specific area. So I did speak about our lightning detection before. So this is an add-on, a license add-on that you can apply to the Alerter server. And someone like myself will get with you and get this configured. Really quick, really easy setup. So at this point, let me take you across to my Alerter server, and I would take you through how do we set up a weather alert service. Now I'm going to keep it simple. We definitely could get a lot more complex, but like I train my users and like I set up systems for our customers, I believe in keeping it simple, because in an emergency, before we even get to that emergency, your IT teams, your emergency preparedness teams, the less steep that I can make that learning curve while giving maximum functionality, to me is a better deal. So I'll keep it simple and it will make sense. So first, we need to ask ourselves, what feed do we have? So to configure that, I will head across to middleware. Depending on your level of access within the Alerter server, you may or may not have that link. If you don't, then it's something that you could perhaps reach out to your IT to get, because they may be administrators or perhaps someone from your emergency preparedness team. So we head into our middleware, we go to our middleware settings, and we go down to Threat Watcher. Here we have a number of ways of getting stuff in. So first, we enable it. We look at our execution interval. This can be tuned depending on what your organization's needs are. By default, this link will be populated in our server. It can be updated, but it works pretty well in a lot of instances. Another key thing to look at is what's our timeout? What type of events would we like to grab? And there are tons, as you can see me scrolling through. There are tons of events that we can grab. If you're not sure, then, and this is what I mean by keeping it simple. If you are not sure what events may apply to your organization or your location, let's just grab all. And then we can do, we can select or narrow down your area to perhaps a zone code or a county code. I like using zone codes. They're just much easier to work with. Or you could define locations, but we're not going to do locations. We're going to do zones. Why not locations? In my experience, weather event is unlikely to be targeted to a specific long lat location. Weather alerts, weather events rather, typically tend to blanket an area. So that's why I prefer zone codes. So if you're not sure what your zone code is, we have a link that you can click on, and this link will give you a long list of zone codes. Similarly, we also have a link for your county codes. So if you'd like to see what that is, you can find it in this list. In my example, I have just one zone. You could, using commas, add as many as you would like. And once we have that in, we can select our urgency, severity, and certainty values. Again, if you're unsure, just select all. We have some additional ways of bringing in those feeds, but for now, we'll do one. So once you've put this in, as simple as it is, this is pre-populated, this is default, turn that on, fill in your zone code, we save our settings. With our settings saved, we go back to our console and we ask ourselves, okay, so I now have feeds coming in, I need to process those feeds. So I need some sort of logic that says, if this happens, then perform X action. Now I do have some stuff already configured, like my preset alerts. I do have my weather alert already configured. For those of you who would have joined my session on setting up these alerts, you know how to do that. For those that haven't, you can check out our recording. So let's put some logic in that says what to do depending on my condition. So let's go to custom event triggers. And I already have some setup. First, I start with a catch-all that simply evaluates everything to true, but ignores my